us is they eat quickly, we force the food temperature. And then they get to talk about how they became scientists and what the challenges were on that path. And I told Dr. Pulliam that it would be really nice to, you know, to hear his part, given that he did the same things that some of our scholars are doing as a prep scholar. I was very happy to introduce him to Dr. Siobhan. I said, prep, prep. So that was nice. Anyway, so Dr. Reid was our original guest, so we'll probably let her be the chair of this. Yeah, and it turns out that but you can continue eating, Bryce. That's, this is, but it is their show. All I do is just show up and eat and take notes because one of the things that Prep and I means that we are doing is to try to write these parts. We want to write it as a paper. The paper is actually being done now for the community, so they see what is the essence of success that minority scientists and other scientists have followed. And so this is about an hour, I think. Just any, it's your show, Dr. Reid.
Yeah, I think I'll start because I think the journey that I take is going to be so different from the journey that you guys are taking now. Certainly what John has gone through. Because I got my PhD in 1986. And actually, when I started out, it was not what I thought I would do, to be honest with you. So I was born in Jamaica. I came here after high school, went to Howard, and I did my master's. And I thought, no, that's good. I did well. And I decided that I had a mentor, Dr. Brenner, and very inspiring, very bright, very smart. And he said to me, if you get A in biochemistry, you can join me for the PhD program. so I went to chemistry. I was taught in the chemistry program, and I did well, and I joined the PhD program. And after a while, to be honest with you, I got burnt out. And I went to school for about 12 years, and I decided to take a break. And that's when I had my first job at Manor Laboratories, and then joined ATCC in 1980. I had finished all my coursework, I had done my comps, and I decided to go back to school and finish my degree. So I actually finished my PhD while I was at ATCC, and did my research while I was at ATCC. They were very generous in allowing me, and I had a fantastic mentor, Dr. Ann Hamburger, who is actually still, she's a full professor at the University of Maryland Cancer Center, and we still keep in touch. And some of the work I actually did at ATCC actually contributed to cell lines. I was actually making, as part of a grant that we had at ATCC, I was actually able to leverage that towards my PhD dissertation, where I was looking at monoclonal antibodies. I was trying to look at endothelial cells and monoclonal antibodies to endothelial cells. And while I was on that path, we found out that endothelial cells were acting like macrophages and had certain markers that were expressed on monocytes, were not expressed on monocytes but on macrophages, and were involved in antigen presentation. And so it became a very, very nice project. I got several publications out of it, and as I said, several hybridoma are in the ATCC cell bank. So I was just about to leave ATCC at the time when the head of the department turned to me and said, I have a nice project for you. We would like for you to set up testing of cell lines using hyperbaric probes. I said, I'm a molecular biologist, I can't do this. I said, oh no, you can do that. So anyway, I delved into it, and commuted for a month to Steve O'Brien's lab in Frederick and learned how to do molecular techniques, where I was using hyperbaric probes. I was making my own probe, using M13 system, cutting out my my construct, labeling them with P32 and then pre-hybridizing them back to these hyperbaric regions, doing southern blots, and being able to apply that to human cell lines, so you uniquely identify one human cell line from another. The technique, I was doing that in 1986, and Jeffers had just described it in 1985. So we were among the first group in the US to be using hyperbaric probes, and certainly that for human identification of cell lines.
And this is what is called fingerprint.
That is now called fingerprinting, and that is what Cellmark actually was doing that at the time, and so I was, communicating with the forensic community and going to their meetings. We evolved from multi-locus probe to BNTRs to know what is STRs and what is used for DNA fingerprinting, and that is now what is used in forensic, and we're still applying it to our cell lines, and we can uniquely identify cell lines. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my presentation later on, where you can actually look for misidentified cell lines. And subsequently, all the other cell banks are now using that technology to be able to identify cell lines. We were the first to start that. And I was head of the cell biology program for 10 years at ATCC, responsible for the acquisition of new material. And more recently, I'm running day-to-day activity and the characterization. So when you buy a cell line from us, most likely, I have seen it, I've gone through it, I have overviewed it, and have been part of that whole process. Now, the past few years, I've been focusing on grants and contracts and getting funding, and I have 2 funded programs currently. So that's it in a nutshell. I've been very, very fortunate when I came here. My sister was already here, my oldest sister. She was a professor at Howard University. She, an English professor. So it was relatively easy for me, to be honest with you. She paid my tuition. So by the time I got to graduate school, I had an internship, and the stipend I got from that, I was able to finance my way through graduate school. I must admit, tuition was much cheaper then. Stipend was much lower then also. So when I graduated, I didn't have student loans to pay or anything. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Any questions?
Well, we'll come back to the
Yeah.
question. We'll let that go to them.
Okay, so I did my undergrad at Berkeley.
First, John, can you tell them your name?
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm John Pulliam, and I'm also working at ATCC, and my role there is as a field application scientist. And so what you do in that role is essentially go out to customers and try to figure out how you can be a resource for the research needs there, and hopefully you also get them to purchase some of the products that will actually support those needs. And I think ATCC now is in a unique position because a lot of the materials there are used as standard products and materials for research. And so I'm really enjoying getting out there and conversing with different scientists as well. But all that kind of was very different than where I thought I would actually be. I did my undergrad, as I said, at Berkeley, and I did that, the major in neurobiology. And after that, I actually went to San Francisco State and did a post-bac there for several years, just so I could boost my grades up, because Berkeley was very tough, to say that. And also, I think it gave me a chance to really get in the lab and also be in touch with more of, I guess, an understanding and a rigor of the fundamental tools I needed to go to the next level. And it was nice because it kind of privatized my experience, because the classes were much smaller and the instructors were much more interested, I think, in teaching. Whereas at Berkeley, they throw the information at you and you really have to scramble and learn it yourself. So I kind of had a combination of experiences there. when I was at San Francisco State, I had the chance to work with Dr. Joe Reyes, and he was a neurobiologist there. And I did in vivo whole animal recording, and basically was looking at learning and memory processes in the dentate gyrus synapse. And that was a very challenging project because I'd never worked with whole animals before, and taking these rats and having to anesthetize them and having to, do surgical manipulation and hit a target and record. It was very challenging, but I really did enjoy that aspect of things. And I was, as I said, really interested in learning about the brain and learning about, the dynamics of how that may lead into behavior. So then I applied to Emory University and got in there, and my graduate work actually shifted gears again, where I was focusing on an animal model of social stress. So I was interested in understanding why a certain peptide was possibly involved in this social subordination behavior, which develops into anxiety and depressive-like behavior in animals. And traditionally, this peptide had been characterized in drug abuse, but I saw that it actually was present and overlapped in all these areas of another peptide, which is called corticotropin-releasing peptide, that is has been well characterized in anxiety and stress, but in these same regions of the brain. So I said, okay, well, what's happening with this peptide in these animals that are socially stressed, following this resident intruder paradigm, which is what I used. So it was really kind of cool, because in nature you see this subordination behavior among all different types of animals, and these smaller rats essentially were put into a cage with this larger rat, which I had to train, and you attack this smaller animal, and then you put them behind a partition, and really the anxiety and the depressive type symptoms develop just from having the animal sit there on the opposite side of this partition for an hour, and you do it over a couple of days, but then you see these really long-lasting effects. So that was very interesting when I saw that the peptide that I was interested in was actually elevated in certain areas of the brain that we had thought were related with anxiety and stress, but more so they were related with drug use. But I hadn't exposed these animals to drugs at all. So I had a couple publications out of that work, but then I went on from there to Morehouse School of Medicine, because I wanted to really hone more of my molecular biology skills. And so I worked with Byron Ford there in his lab, and he focused on stroke primarily, but he also delved into the area of neurotoxicity and brain repair, because it was really interesting. He had all this data associated with microarray, which showed that there are sets of genes that overlapped between stroke and also traumatic brain injury and neurotoxicity. And so my project was designed to look at how these certain transcriptional regulators were associated with these sets of genes that are elevated in stroke. And so I was able to basically confirm some of those findings from the bioinformatics analyses using histochemistry and Western blotting, and also had done some in vitro cell culture. And after that experience, I decided, well, maybe I want to go back and look at psychiatry models again. And so I was really interested in epigenetics and how that can be related to some of these systems that are associated with anxiety. And I worked with a former mentor of mine, David Walker, and that project hadn't necessarily gone as far as I would have liked, but at the time I also was interning at the Technology Transfer Office at Emory, because I wanted to explore my other options, just because, talking to a lot of the colleagues that I had and people that I knew had gone through the process, they had told me, well, explore your options, make sure you don't pigeonhole yourselves, because the market out there is not as, not as great as you may think. because there are a lot of PhDs. So I, fortunately really enjoyed my time in technology transfer, and then I decided to apply for this current position here at ATCC, and I think I got it because I had transitioned briefly from that postdoc at Emory into a cancer biology lab at Clark Atlanta, and I was doing more bioinformatic analysis along the same line, but it was in prostate cancer, which was, I never thought I would do that, but but interestingly, it was utilizing the same techniques that I had used in the prior postdocs, which was looking at transcriptional regulators associated with genes that were elevated in prostate cancer. But again, I had applied to this job at ATCC, and along with that slew of, I think, research experience as well as my interest in commercializing, then I was able to get the position I have now. So I'm not in the lab anymore, but I do still interact with scientists that are in the lab to make sure that I'm still on top of my game in terms of understanding what the products are and translating them to customers that are out there. But I do enjoy the commercial side of things as well, because it's a chance to kind of see how these products are actually being used in the hands of individuals, and maybe not just in that way that they're being advertised, but also to see where else you can expand the use of those products in different areas. So I really like that. So that's me in a nutshell.
We'll open it up to the scholars. Janita, you want to take Frank's position as the first question?
You take a middle place. Well, so I just, Dr. Pulliam, is that correct? Okay, so when you mentioned about your postdoc experience and transitioning to where you are now, is this, I guess, did you want to transition to academia? Or are you looking at kind of this industry kind of overlap position where you still?
Initially, I did want to transition into academia, and I decided against that because I had an interesting conversation with a fellow, well, actually he was a mentor in the technology transfer office, and he had actually gone through academia, and he decided to get out of it. And he said basically it wasn't that he couldn't do it, but he felt he was better at what he was doing. And so I was like, okay, I listened to that and I was like, okay, I have to really look at myself and say, it's not that I can't do it, but I really like what I'm doing right here. So why not do what you like?
Okay, so this is like your position, not to say forever, but till you find the next career path?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, or it could be permanent, but I like what I'm doing.
Okay.
So that's, I think, the important thing is really do what you like.
And how long was your postdoc? Sorry, last question.
Oh, that's fine. Gosh, 5 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
in the same group?
No, different groups.
Thanks.
So the experience at Morehouse was a postdoc experience, and that did not change your mind about staying to help people, or they help you?
No, I mean, it doesn't change my mind because I figure I can be in a better capacity now to help people. Because the thing is, during the training, and as I was mentioning to Yvonne, I went to workshops at NIH, and I got there and I heard that, hey, this is the data. 80% of postdocs are not going into academic medicine or academic careers. So, that's weird. So, in the workshop was designed to teach you how to get grants and teach you how to, go into, those academic careers. But a lot of postdocs there were asking the question, well, why is the workshop not designed for the 80%? Right? To teach them, what are these alternative paths that you can actually have with your skill set. And there's a lot of demand out there for people that have a skill set, understand how to technically assess information and translate it to something that a consumer may want. So that's something that I realized then.
Because I think one of the challenges is really why people are so afraid of getting back into academia or into research is the need for funding. And the funding is so competitive. People are shying away from it.
Are you interested in academia?
Today, sure. Yesterday, yes. Tomorrow, try and keep, like you said, keep your options kind of open,
Absolutely.
where you don't pick a postdoc or something that's so restricted that you only have one trajectory.
But I think that, you know, looking at the way things are now, you know, you really have to have the support of a mentor, and you really have to get those publications and get those grants in order to move up the chain. That's very important if you're going to get into an academic career in any capacity. Just get your network on.
So while people are thinking of a question, so, I mean, industry has its own challenges. Can you, you've been there 11 months, so Reid, can you say what has been the toughest part of being in the industry?
Constant changes.
So we'll tell Dr. Fuller to close his ears.
Well, he's experiencing it already, but I
Okay.
think with industry, it's a constant change where you definitely have to be flexible. Depending on the leadership at any given time, there are whims and fancy, and so you may go in there thinking that, what you're about to do is very clear and nothing's going to change. But as the upper level changes, the directors changes, they come in with new ideas, and so you have to be constantly be flexible to move with those changes. That is actually one of the biggest challenges, and I know some people get very upset about it, they get freaked out, I can't do this, I don't like what they do and all that. But if you really want to stay in any industry, it doesn't matter where you go, it's being very, very flexible. That is the number one challenge, to be honest with you. And of course, as you just mentioned, flexibility also in wanting to learn other things also, because you will be working with others and you'll be collaborating, and so the fields change, it evolves, and so the focus of the industry may be changing also, because what you went in, and a few years after it will be going in a direction, and so you have to be also flexible to be able to learn. It's a constant learning process. I mean, you can imagine I got my PhD in the 80s, and science has changed tremendously. And so I'm constantly reading, I'm trying to keep up with all the young people and try to be relevant. And so, I don't have a choice. You just have to.
Kevin, I see you're interested in asking.
I had a question about possibly business startups. Now with the abundance of PhDs, and also the government has a lot of small grants for businesses. Have you ever thought about going that option, or do you know people who have went that option after possibly getting their postdocs or something?
I don't know of people that have personally gone that option, but I do know, for instance, about a month or two ago, I was out in San Francisco at this scientific incubator called QB3, and I was being approached by postdocs that were starting their own small companies. They had ideas, and they're trying to get those off the ground. So it's definitely happening out there. I think that people really are understanding that having a PhD offers you a dynamic kind of position in terms of being able to go many different directions. It's just you have to network and find out what's right for you, and whether or not you have what it takes to start a business. There's a lot that's involved in it. I would say talk to the university. If you're at a university, you see how successful they are with small business development associated with technological innovation. So if you're here, I think you probably are well suited to be able to have support for that.
One thing in coming Stanford is that, yes, having a good idea is one thing, but you must have a very good and sound business background also, because that is key. And also making sure you have a business plan, look at all the risks involved and opportunities and so forth, and how to mitigate those risks.
So that's a good question about the small business innovative research. So SPIR, they have these grants that they, do you guys have to put those together? Do you, ATCC, is that something you look forward to?
Actually,
I haven't put one together yet.
I have put a couple together.
Okay.
I do have, two SBIRs.
Okay. So in an industry, you don't get away from this funding
Oh,
concern
no.
that you
Oh, no,
tell
no, no.
social media.
No, the way ATCC is actually, broken up right now is that there's the repository activities, the collection, and what we call the biological resource activity, and John is more associated with that. I'm part of the commercial part, or where I focus on grants and contracts. And so ATCC revenue comes from the fees that are charged for the different biological products, but also from grants and contracts. And so most of my activities currently are focusing on getting funding through grants and contracts. So no, we never get away from that, at least some of us anyway.
Alright. Any questions from?
I have a question of you guys.
Very
What do you guys think you want to do now?
In terms of academia or industry?
Just whatever, yeah.
I guess I'll start.
Mhm.
I don't think I want to go into academia, so I want to explore all the other options. I don't know, things could change, but that doesn't really seem like a passion of mine. So that's where I am right now.
I'm all in on academia, actually. That was the initial goal coming into it. It still is.
Good.
As far as my interests, they're in kind of both academia as well as industry / human research science. Hopefully at an institution such as NIH. I'd like to acquire some teaching experience kind of see how it goes as far as developing my career path.
Like I told y'all my life story already. But, so I'm kind of at that transition point now, looking forward. Do I want to do a postdoc more at a university that has maybe a health affiliation, such as a hospital on campus, or working for NIH or the government? So just kind of keeping options open at this point. I do enjoy mentoring from having summer research groups and things like that. But in the perfect world, like 10 years from down the road, I want to go more into administration and deal more with recruitment and diversity on that level. But I'm about to say you have to kind of establish yourself first as a research, go what everyone else does for a while, and then transition back. So that's kind of what I'm looking into now, to make sure I'm not limiting myself based on my degrees I have, because I'm not in the traditional I'm conversational biology now, so making sure I have the skill set that work for wherever I decide to go. That's what I'm looking at.
I'm also all in on academia.
I'm industry. I don't think I would like to go into academia. I do like the mentoring part of academia, and that's what, sometimes I think about it, but not necessarily. But I have interest in working for the government.
I'm pretty much all interested in industry. No interest in academia whatsoever.
As of right now, I'm just mostly focused on getting my PhD, and then I'll see how the future dynamics, as far as industry and academia, how they plan out. But I do also have a goal, long-term goal, like having my own business and getting my MBA. So
I want to be a professor at HBCU.
Kind of confused right now. I don't know if I want to go into academics or industry. I'm leaning a little bit more towards industry, just because I want to get out of that whole structured routine that we go through since undergrad all the way through PhD. Maybe explore my options in industry. So leaning more towards the industry side.
So, I'm hoping to go into academia.
So I have a question for you guys while they're still thinking. How about mentoring? Some of our scholars talked about. Do you guys get to mentor in industry? And I think Alexis mentioned that impact would be something she may miss if she goes to industry. You have a chance to mentor students at or have you missed that aspect of it?
Well, I do a little bit of it. We do have some interns that come through, and actually I've had people even volunteer to be in my lab. And even though I'm being paid under one of my funded programs, I also conduct a workshop. And this year will be the 4th workshop where we it's a wet workshop, it's hands-on, and the first workshop was in basic techniques in tissue culture. The second one was basic techniques in immunology, and the third was in basic techniques in molecular biology. And that will be repeated this summer. And most of the participants for that workshop are individuals from physical sciences. So we're talking about engineer, physicist, mathematician, and starting with how to hold a pipette, and by the time they're finished, they can maybe do cloning. So I do have some opportunity to actually do some too.
And for me, I haven't had as much opportunity, just because I've started, only 11 months ago, but I do look forward to having the opportunity. We do, or have had in the past, an internship program, which I could participate in. So, if that opportunity arises, then I'd love to do that. But, mostly the mentoring I do is through friends or, things informal right now. And definitely enjoy doing that because, as you said, others have helped me, and I certainly want to give back in whatever way I can.
I think that point is very important because when you hire people, you're actually being mentors also. Because you have to train them, and if you are a good supervisor, the onus is on you to really take them through the process. Because these are young people who are just coming out of school, whether it is at the postgraduate level or the undergraduate level. It's how well they survive through your experience, and consequently your experiences is how you actually treat them while they're in that.
I have a question. Is continuing to do like wet bench work, is that important to you guys in your you want to be able to continue to do that?
For me it is. I mean, I was in the lab up to 2 days ago, pipetting and helping out. I think it helps for the mentoring. It certainly helps because it's relevant. I can keep up to date. I know what is going on. I know what it is I'm talking about. It also helps me when I'm giving a presentation. It's not something I'm reading from a book and I'm regurgitating and talking about. It's something that I know, something I've experienced. I know where all the pitfalls are. I know where the problems are. And so that helps me to keep in touch and be relevant. Yes. So for me personally, yes.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I haven't been at the bench as much, but this past year, for example, I was tasked to do a webinar on stem cell, and there a lot of customers had complained about using these feeder cells, and we actually have a feeder-free system, but then they were having some trouble with that. So since I had never done it before, I went to the lab and I learned how to do that. And then I gave the webinar. So then I would, be able to address their concerns because I've actually done it. And so I think there is again a part of, at least a part of me that feels like I need to have some kind of an organic process for things that I don't know. So for instance, this next bit of learning I have is to learn about the microbiology products that we have. And I've taken a class once in public health studies, but I haven't been in the lab to apply those things. And so I will take the time and learn how those things are being applied in the lab. So when I go out and have a conversation, I can understand what some of the challenges are that people may have.
And like a follow-up question, is it easy to find time to do that work?
No, you have to carve it out. You have to carve it out, and so that's something that one of the things I'm a big proponent of is time management and planning beforehand. So I always ahead so that I'm not stuck scrambling, and it allows me to execute on the things that I know are coming down the road. So,
A typical day for me starts at 9 o'clock and maybe ends at about 7:30, 8. It's almost every day. It includes weekends sometimes. So it never ends. So even after practice school. Yeah.
This is more sort of specific question regarding your past research on the rats and sort of stress and everything else. What sort of brain areas and structures did you find that were associated with sort of I think it's cortical and tropism factors?
oh gosh, there are a lot of areas, but I actually looked at CART peptide. So the areas that I found that had the highest cell counts were the medial amygdala and also the nucleus accumbens, obviously shell area. And excuse me. And the reason I think for that is because there are some projections that come into those areas which ascend from some of the areas in the hindbrain that really are specific towards responding to fear, and they get elevated, and that peptide is also released. Limbic areas.
So there's an anecdote that the dean of their college, engineering, tells. So he graduated from Berkeley, his PhD, and then took a job with Xerox. So he actually worked on, at Berkeley, his dissertation was on the floppy disk that most of our scholars probably don't know about. But so he went to Xerox and he worked on making sure that the copier were stable. So if you put it in there, it doesn't catch fire, and so in Rochester. But then he went to conferences. I mean that Xerox was paying him. It was good. He went to conference and he got really jealous of other graduates that he had, being somebody from Michigan. He actually tells that I got her PhD in Michigan. She was presenting. She was working at a university, and he missed that. So 2 years later, he became an adjunct at University of Rochester in the same town that Xerox was in. And then 2 years later, he left to join the faculty of Rochester. Do you guys miss when you go to conferences, seeing academic scientists talking fancy stuff? Being free to talk about their work and there are no limitations. Dr. Reid.
Well, yes and no. Because when I go to those conferences, I think I can contribute how to make their experiments better. Because most of my presentation that I give, and I'm invited maybe about 4 to 5 times a year by pharmaceutical companies, by biotech, academia, to talk about what I'm going to be talking about today. And because of the irreproducibility of data, and it's a big thing, what it's talking about, 80% of the data that is coming out is not reproducible. So my presentation is like a foundation of what most people will need to bear in mind if they're working with cells, so that they have good practices. So I almost feel like I'm part of academia in terms of working with them and working to make sure that what they're doing is okay. I think ATCC is one of those pseudo places where it's like partial academia, partial biotech, is not fully one or the other, because we're constantly involved in education and working with people in terms of improving their processes. So I'm not sure I totally miss it to some extent, because I feel like I'm also part of it in some way.
And I would say I feel the same, because that's what my role is, constantly corresponding or in touch with investigators at either Division I institutions or pharmaceutical companies, and really, my goal is again to really understand what they're doing. And so, in order to understand what they're doing, I have to have those conversations where, relate things to me and I can relate back to them. And I also do attend conferences as well, in different capacities. But I either can go there and exhibit at the conference, or I'll go there and just be a part of the conference and build up my network as well. But you have to take the time to read and try to understand what's at the forefront of things, because otherwise, what good are you? So you're there to try to help them find another way of utilizing what they're already doing. So that means you have to be hopefully on the cutting edge as well.
Very nice. Any more questions? You guys have cards that
Yeah, I do.
email you. Shara wants to know how to make Jamaican jerk. Well, we have to thank our guest, Dr. Zhang.